apocalypse.
Outside apocalypse, yeah. Hello, guys. Welcome back to Lender Lounge with Kevin Kim. As you can all see, I am not Kevin Kim. I am your very special guest host today, Audie Munoz. Been working with these guys here at Jurassic for about 2 years, and today we're going to get a little bit more personal with them to kind of put the work stuff aside since we're getting ready for the holidays. So just see if we could get to know them a little bit better. Do you guys want to say hi, Kevin, Nema?
Why don't you go first?
Nema.Benden. You all know me as the person who stands next to a whiteboard on LinkedIn. So nonetheless, I've got a whiteboard here.
Just in case.
Don't use it though.
I'm usually yelling at you to try to get you to do something with legislation. Or otherwise yelling at everybody here because I have nothing better to do.
Gotta save that Reg D.
Hey guys, Kevin Kim here. So really excited to do this. This is a product of many dinners we've had at all the different shows we've been at this year, and I get a lot of feedback from former guests and also listeners like, "Hey, why aren't we doing something more to get to know you guys better?" So we listened to our audience, and here we are today. So yeah, and Audie is the best interviewer in the office, and also best personality in the office. So let's get this started, man.
Hey, thank you. Alrighty, yeah, let's get into it. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, today is really a special edition because, like Kevin said, we're going to get to know them a little bit better outside of the workplace, see what makes them tick a little bit. You all know them at conferences, you all see them hustling, but let's get into their humble beginnings. Tell me about your family, your home life growing up. What was your childhood like?
So for me, I've got an older brother who was 6 months old when he came here to the United States with my family. So my family emigrated from Iran, and I was born here. And when I was born, my parents determined that they were going to stay here in the United States. And so our story very much is a small immigrant family of a much larger family that was mostly in Iran. Kind of just figuring out a mismatch of worlds, right? Effectively, what is how to understand the American system and how to work. My parents effectively just kind of plowed into me of your only job in life is to become a doctor, which, as you can tell, I succeeded at. And
best doctor there is.
Yeah.
Juris Doctor.
Yeah, technically, for those that don't know, JD stands for Juris Doctor. So a 1. But
for those of you who don't know, Nema will also be offering free medical advice on this podcast.
Yeah, and so I grew up in Orange County for most of my life. I stayed here till I was about 25. Went to law school, and went there for 3 years. And in Florida, came back here and started practicing here at this very firm right when I graduated, and that's my history.
All right. Well, can't wait to get into that a little bit more. But Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about your upbringing?
Yeah. So my parents immigrated to the U.S. as students in 81, and actually not in 81. They got married that year, immigrated right away, and then they had me right after that. They moved to River Falls, Wisconsin. My father was getting his post-bachelor's at the University of Wisconsin, River Falls. And for those of you who know Wisconsin, River Falls area, at least, it's not Madison, so it's very much a farm town. And so I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota. Moved to Michigan. Father got his MBA there, and then moved to California when I was I think 5 or 6, something like that. He got a job at a Korean bank here in Koreatown, Los Angeles. So we moved here, but spent a lot of summers still in Michigan, back and forth, because my aunts and my cousins still live there. They were the first to come to the U.S. in our family back in the 70s. And then, I grew up in Cerritos, California, which is on the border of Orange County and LA County. And, went to high school down here in Orange County, went to college up in Berkeley, got away as far as I could go without leaving the state. Didn't want to leave the state. And then went to work for a bank like my dad. After all that, really got out of college with a liberal arts degree, not sure what to do. And, upon recommendation from my family, who are all bankers, they're like, well, join the family history and go into banking. It was great, though. I learned about money. I learned about how it works. I learned about financing. I learned about mortgages, hence kind of where I'm at today. What was cool was I got to learn about the world and how it worked. And it was my first real job. And then all this time, I'm thinking about going to law school. Go to law school in LA. Haven't left, really. I was this close to going to Notre Dame when I was in college, but chose public school or private school because of tuition. But yeah, I mean, stayed in California the rest of my life. Haven't really left. Yeah, that's kind of who I am today.
I've thought about this. You can't ever be deposed on behalf of the law firm. He asked a very basic question, and you gave a very long answer. So I'm going to state that for the record.
I'm a lawyer. What do you want me to say?
That was a lot of words.
Don't
That was
worry.
a lot of words.
Don't worry, because I'll just follow it up with a little bit of a more tough question. So something that I find really interesting about both you guys is that both of your parents immigrated here from other countries. So I want to know, especially growing up in Orange County too, as you can see, we're probably not the typical demographic for around these parts. What was the biggest challenge you guys faced as minorities growing up here? And I'll start with Nema.
Actually, where I grew up in Orange County, it was very much a working class, primarily immigrant community. In my 5th grade class, there were 3 Nemas. I kid you not.
No way.
You were the only one with an E.
I was only with an E. That's a longer story. My parents
Nema
messed
with an
up.
I.
There's a nurse at UCLA that I still hate to this day who messed up my name for life. That's a deep, long story to my therapist. But more importantly, though, it actually was the best thing that has ever happened to me, which is I grew up, and still to this day, all of my best friends, my best friends are French, Argentinian, Korean, outside of Kevin, and
Didn't make the cut.
and all across the board. And I didn't realize that was a special thing. I didn't know, and actually, oddly enough, it wasn't until I went to school in Miami, which I thought would be a cultural diverse hub, did I realize how lucky I was to grow up in South Orange County and grow up in a melting pot without realizing I was growing up in a melting pot.
Right.
It's been such a great part of my life, is to have to just be enmeshed in all these different cultures without realizing this was an experience.
Very cool. Kevin, anything to add to that?
I also grew up in Orange County, so Orange County is super diverse, right? So in the city we grew up in, Orange County, I grew up in Fullerton and Cerritos, super high density Korean community. So we really didn't have a lot of the minority challenge growing up or facing the whole idea of racism or prejudice. But I would spend summers in Michigan, and I was very involved with the local Korean community there, and you got a sense of the value of Korean identity a lot more over there, Asian American identity over there. But yeah, I mean, there was no real challenges. Of course, you had the random idiots throughout life, but and also never left, right? So I've kind of been here my entire life. So that's been the nice part. But the interesting part was, like, at least in my community, was everybody in my community, all the parents were like super educated people. Like, they were all like in their home country were doctors, lawyers, engineers, and a lot of them came here and they opened, a liquor store, laundromat, grocery store. My parents, they opened, my dad worked for a bank, but my mom opened a gift store. Like, a lot of them were in brick and mortar retail, or in service businesses, because of the language barrier. And they serve their community, and they instilled in us, like, make sure that you're able to break through and serve the community at large, because we don't want you to get stuck because of any kind of cultural language barriers that you may face, right? So that was an important part of my upbringing, I think.
Yeah.
And so funny enough, is that, so growing up in a cultural hub, I really am just very fortunate that I really didn't experience what I would say is any form of racism or any thirst. I mean, just generally speaking, has not been the issue. Oddly enough, except for one place, which is from other Persians. And the reason why, my parents intentionally wanted stop speaking Farsi when I was a child. Once I was born, we talked about that earlier. They said, hey, we want to make sure we're going to plant a flag here. We're staying here. We're going to stay for the long term. We want our children to succeed in this society. So they intentionally did not speak Farsi around my brother and I, because they did not want us to have accents, and they wanted us to as a family to learn English together. And so that was an intentional act on their end. I never learned Farsi because of this. And so still to this day, I will be in grocery stores or otherwise, and people look at me and they go, "Are you Persian?" Or they hear on and they say, "Oh, your name's Nema?" And so it's a dead giveaway. And then I say that, and they immediately say a sentence in Farsi, effectively to the degree is, "Do you know Farsi?" And I respond with, in English, "Oh, no, I only speak English." And they go, "Oh." So
No, it makes sense. I definitely get that same reaction out of Mexicans sometimes when they find out I don't speak Spanish, but it's just like, it's just been bred out of my family for generation and generation. I'm like, it's not my fault. Teach me if you want me to know. Be happy to learn. Very cool, very cool. So yeah, on that note too, do you guys face any challenges as minorities today? Would you say you run into any issues with this, or would you say it's a pretty...
When I first started practicing, it was a weird thing. I don't know if it was a matter of working. I worked in Koreatown right when I got out of law school. It was 2009. There were no jobs. I got the first job I could working for some tiny little Korean law firm. And it was really weird because I would get, Koreans being more like, "I don't want to work with a Korean lawyer. Is your boss Jewish?" I was like, "What? That's the most racist thing you could ever say. Like, why would you say that?" But that was really it. I mean, aside from that, really not much. The nice part about our industry too is it's quite diverse, and a lot of people are very accepting. So we have clients in parts of the country where I was very surprised that they'd be very accepting to work with a young Asian American attorney, and they don't really raise any issues about it. So never really faced it.
Yeah, I would concur on that. I think that, my parents always pushed in me is be the best at whatever you're going to be. And I think that, people have appreciated our honesty, transparency, and just our desire to be really good lawyers. And I've never felt stereotyped or cast or otherwise. I feel really fortunate for that.
Well, good. I think this world is naturally progressing into a more accepting place anyway. So that's really good to hear that you guys don't face these challenges too often. All right, so we talked about your childhood. We talked about your families a little bit. Tell me about your guys' selves in high school. Everyone goes through their high school awkward phase. I want to know, in what ways are you similar to your high school self, and what ways are you different?
Back to that therapist issue.
Let's talk about his name being spelled with an E.
High school was not kind to me. I was very overweight. I had no self-esteem, and it was a very, very challenging. I was the quintessential "it gets better" campaign post high school. It was a very tough 4 years.
It was weird for me too, but I wasn't like I played. It was weird because I was a jock, but I was also a nerd at the same time. I was a small private school, so like I played football, I played tennis, but I was also in band and orchestra, and I was also like one of the top students in the school. So it's kind of like it was a weird.
What is this thing?
What is this thing? But very common with Asian American students was like, you want to be cool, right? You want to be freaking cool. It's like. I remember trying so hard to be cool. Like I picked up smoking, I picked up drinking, I picked up like chasing girls. Like I was doing all these stupid things that like a 15-year-old should not be doing. And I look back at myself like, God damn it, Kevin, what were you thinking? But at the same time, also like overachieving in school and overachieving in sports, and like having the typical Asian American experience with a tiger mom who really pushed you, but at the same time was not really overly strict if you got the grades. So like there was that strange part of life. And today it's like very much like I live the most like I literally go to work, I go home, pick my kids to bed, watch TV, and go to sleep. That's really all I do. So it's a very like different person that I am today. It's so funny.
Fair.
Yeah.
And so if you could go back and tell your high school self one thing, what would you tell him? What would you tell little Kevin?
Just be yourself.
Just be yourself.
It's okay to be you, man. It's okay to be you. And that's probably the hardest thing to do when you're a young person, right? And
right.
You have so much pressure to fit in.
To be
even as you get older, there's so much pressure to fit in, right? And fit a certain mold. Just be you. And that's why I love it here at Rossi, because like you could just be yourself here.
Yeah.
I think for me, it would be very much your choices belong to you. You don't need to do these things for other people. Ultimately, the decisions you're now choosing and making will ultimately affect you the most. And so understand the long-term game about your own decision-making process.
That's awesome. Very awesome. I'm sure you guys' high school selves would be thrilled to have that advice.
No, it would definitely be like,
it'd be tough. I feel like,
yeah,
because you don't want to hear any of that
Oh,
stuff when
real
you're in
dumb.
high school.
And I didn't know you back then, but
My
I assure
high
you,
school
you were
self
real dumb.
would have tried to kick my ass, and then I would have kicked my own ass. Yeah.
Yeah, especially too, I guess when you're in high school, you don't really want to hear all this advice from adults, no matter
it
how
was the
valuable
worst,
it is.
right? Like, you had your cousin who like achieved it all, and he's telling you how to live your life. I'm like, dude, you don't know me. I should have listened.
He did know you.
All right, okay. So on that note too, on giving advice, what's the absolute craziest? Let's take it on the flip side of this. What's the absolute craziest thing you guys have ever done? I'm talking like ended up in prison, ran from the cops, you name it. I want to know it all.
You want to go first?
Tell me your dark secrets.
No, you go. You can take this one.
I'm sensing some hesitation.
I mean, not the craziest thing I've ever done, but the probably most intense situation was I think this was like I got out my first summer back from college. I was driving with friends of mine. A friend tagged along. We're in the car. And then turns out, like, I did not know this guy, but turns out one of them had a warrant for an arrest. And we got pulled over. I'm like, oh, crap.
A warrant? What was?
And so we got pulled over for no reason. I thought I was speeding. I'm getting a speeding ticket. This cop literally pulls us over to arrest this guy, and he thinks we're all like his accessories or something. That was the craziest experience. Literally, like, I had done some stupid things in my life, but I had never actually been at at the receiving end of law enforcement like that. And I was just, holy crap. I thought I was gonna poop my pants. And thankfully, we were able to really kind of talk our way out. We don't know this guy, and take him away, please. That kind of things. But it was scary.
And so what ended up happening? Did they arrest your friend?
They arrested him. He wasn't a friend. He was a friend of a friend.
Okay.
Yeah, he got arrested, but that's that. I mean, a lot of stupid teenage episodes of we've all had them, right?
Right.
Roof testing microwaves and things like that. But beyond that, nothing crazy. So.
Still having a couple of those moments myself.
There you go. Right.
All right, Nema, this is going to be good. He has a little smile on his face for those of you who can't see.
I went to go visit my friend who was down at a college in San Diego, and went with a couple of friends. We were down there, and I had like this little pickup truck, and two of them were in the back of the pickup truck, and two of us were in the front. And I'm just like goofing around doing donuts in like the campus parking lot, and just jumping curbs and just acting like an idiot in my car. And we see flashing lights start approaching, and so we ditch the truck and jump out and run. And we're like, you know what we're gonna do right now? We're going to switch into each other's clothes. That way they can't identify us. And so there's four idiots in the middle of a college campus.
It was foolproof.
Switches to each other's clothes. But never got caught. So
all right.
That's how you get out of it, folks.
That's the moral of the story. Switch your clothes with your friend.
And run from the police.
So now I know that the real answer to my last question is if you could go back and tell your high school self one thing, it would be to switch clothes with your friends when the cops arrive.
Yes.
Got it.
It wasn't
me.
me.
It makes sense.
It wasn't me.
Did you see a Persian guy in a holiday sweater?
All righty. Well, as we know, these two squares don't run from the cops anymore, and they've aged out of that a little bit. Just kidding. But I do want to know something that you're proud of in adulthood that you would go back and let me rephrase this question. What is something you've accomplished in your adulthood that you would go back and make your childhood self proud?
Being a dad, that was not expected. Well, it was expected. I mean, it was kind of part of the plan, but like it was not really like thought through very well. Like, you have the assumption you're going to have kids, but you don't really think it through. But explaining the impact having children has on a young man's mentality, not even lifestyle, like just mentality, right? Like it's a big difference maker. And also the bad stuff too, like the good and the bad, right? And to explain to, like, I'd probably tell my younger self, like, dude, get started early because you ain't gonna have the energy to keep up with these two monsters. But at the same time,
he loves his children, by the way.
I love my children. They are. I mean, I'm almost 40, and I've got a 1-year-old. It's exhausting. But at the same time, the mindset change is also like really interesting because, it's almost instinctual, right? The whole idea of the whole provider mentality really kind of clicks in. And it's not something that you like automatically, I'm gonna choose to be this way. It's almost
it's biological wiring.
It's biological wiring,
Oh man,
right?
the moment that kid comes out, there is some weird thing that happens in your brain.
Like, holy crap.
Yeah. It was weird.
I had the urge to work when my first kid was born. I was like, oh my gosh, I should work right now.
No, there is a weird. I mean, truly, it is a biological effect. I can't explain anyone else. It's just that kid comes out and you're like I am going to care for you. I'm going to take care. Like it is just it's everything is fire.
Change.
But again, it's not the best way to describe it is a biological switch that is occurring. It is not I need to be more responsible. It is like I am caring for you. Like I as your father need to care for you. It's different than I as your uncle, I as your someone who cares about you. It is I am as a father, you are forever going to be taken care of by me. Like in an immediate, in the moment, it happened. But that's not what I'm proud of. I don't care about that. I mean, that's fine. Having kids, I mean, I feel like, not that challenging technically. Dude, come on. Dude, I have so many trying so hard. That's so messed up, dude.
Terrible. Okay, well, I have a follow-up before you answer this question too, because I do want to dig into that a little bit more. Would you say that moment happened for you when your kids were actually born, or would you say that happened somewhere along, like during the pregnancy or maybe in their childhood? When did that moment happen for you?
The moment I held my son for the first time. It was unbelievably biological. And I'll give you the best example. I do not, and still to this day, do not like holding brand new babies. I'm always worried that I will drop and break a brand new baby. The only time that has not happened has been with my own children, in which I picked them up and I held them and I felt completely at ease. And it was only with my own children.
That's awesome. You're going to be the first person to hold my babies. Like, Nema, fresh off the womb for you.
Oh, man.
Kevin, same question? I said, when did this moment happen for you? When it was? Was it when Audrey and Abby were born, or like during pregnancy?
With Abby, it was like right at birth. My wife had these kids like in 30 minutes flat. It was like the shortest like birth you ever saw in your life. But it was weird. I was like, I looked down, put the bags down. Doctor was like, push, and started pushing up. I look up, and the baby's here, right? And so when Abby was born, they did the whole like right away to her chest. I wasn't allowed to touch her. So they move her to that little thing where they test all of her things, and I went over there, and my mom told me to make sure to count all the fingers and toes. So I went over and counted all the fingers and toes, and that was it. Like, oh,
make sure they're all there.
Yeah, but something clicked with Audrey. We had a little more of a challenge in pregnancy, and my wife had to be admitted, and there was the second admission, and I had to watch Abby myself and occasionally comfort her because mom was in the hospital. That clicked it. I was like, oh, this kid coming. And there was something else. I mean, more of like, oh my goodness, I have two to take care of, two to protect, two to feed for, and I have two daughters, and so it's like I'm like literally surrounded by women my entire day. Like these two are the only men that I work with, like literally. So
that sucks.
Yeah. But it's also like it's something about that instinctual like thing that comes in. It was really interesting to me, so I can't really describe it.
That's interesting. Very interesting. All right, Nema, while I won't deprive you of the last question, what is something you've accomplished in adulthood that would make your childhood self proud?
I was the quintessential boy who had the car posters on their wall. I've always been a car person. I love cars. This year was the first time I ever bought a nice car that I've really kind of always wanted as a small child. And so it was very fulfilling to say that that little boy who was dreaming was able to finally get something.
That's awesome. Very cool. Very cool. And so what would you guys say the defining moment of your career was? I know we talked about childhood, how you guys were, or not childhood, parenthood, where maybe like you were on one path and then having kids just completely shifted things in a new direction. What would you say that moment of your career was?
That's a tough one. Because I would say clearly making partner changed my responsibility here, right? So that had its moment, but that wasn't so much a moment. It was a process, which I started to understand that my role had changed and what I was going to be responsible to change. So that was clearly a big thing. But actually, I go back to funny enough, having kids. To me, having kids made me a much, much, much better professional. I had a passion to produce while here and do it within because I had the luxury of time pre-kids. And so I remember I oftentimes worked, 12 hours a day, and it wasn't a big deal. And that was just kind of the nature of it. I enjoyed what I did. And so it didn't bother me. And having to get the same amount of work done in much less time made me into a much more disciplined individual. And that probably had the biggest impact. I think my career started, funny enough, did much better post-children than pre-children, because I think I was able to just really be disciplined about my approach while here.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Very cool. Kevin?
I'd say kind of similar. Ruby makes fun of me for this, but it was like when I made partner, I also had my first kid. Like the year of, I had made partner, had a kid, bought a house, bought a Lexus. Like it was like
bang, 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 bang.
All in one day, all 1 year. And
all one day.
Same day.
It was a weird day, folks.
And so that was an interesting year. And it was kind of like when you discover the importance of a support system, that was, and how to rely on that, that didn't exist for me before. I wasn't quite sure how to do that. But then also there was a moment, I feel like it was at a conference. I forget which one it was. It probably was APL, where really like, it was like you and I were there, and a lot of us were like we hadn't gotten this much respect before.
Yeah.
And like, we hadn't gotten this much attention before. And suddenly we did. And like, people were asking us like,
it was when we had the event at outside of
the link. Yeah. Right.
At the Mexican restaurant.
After the big Ferris wheel thing. I don't know what year it was.
Yes. We walked off stage and there was like, oh wow. Like, people are listening for the first time.
Yeah. And it was, I was, I was still, I think I was like, I'm still in my 30s, but it was like, for the longest time, we as an organization, but also myself, was trying to prove like, hey, we know what we're talking about.
Yeah,
like
we're serious.
We're serious. We know our stuff. Right. That was the first time that people actually like took us seriously, and because I think it's also we're young, right? So like, they're like, oh, these guys don't know anything. There's no gray hair there,
right?
And would you say that shift was solely due to your new title as partner?
Absolutely not.
I don't think so. I don't think I was partner at the time.
Okay. I don't think you're a partner. I think that was that was the year before partner for you. And but I think what that was the first year I think we coined shake and bake, right? That was the first year we ever did a shake and bake, which was really what made us unique was that Kevin is a subject matter expert in corporate securities and is a PPM guru and has an incredible depth in the subject matter. So now it's REITs, it's tax planning, it's all sorts of, when you are hyper specialized, like all I do is this, right? You become very good and better than anyone who is doing multiple things. I was going down the exact opposite road, which I was going down the loan document, real estate finance, compliance side of it. So I was getting a 50-state knowledge that was extremely deep as well. So when you put the two of us on stage, we were better than anybody in the industry because nobody had that depth and breadth in our two little jurisdictions. And so I think it really demonstrated, they're a serious law firm. They're serious people that know that they're doing. And it was only because we were able to both become hyper specialized in our own fields.
But it was fascinating. Like it was like better than the year when I had because I went to APL 1 year after, like immediately after I had Abby, like a week after. I get so much crap for this to this day. But that show was probably like, what the heck? Like, this is the most interesting feeling. And then every APL afterwards, every industry event afterwards, really, like it started to kind of shape branding for the organization. Right. And being part of that was also really defining for me too. So.
Very cool, very cool. And I like how you brought up too, just having that support system and conference season too, because I want to shift it over to my next question. So I've oftentimes referred to both Kevin and Nema as my conference dads, just because they're always there to guide me when I need them. And they're always there to teach me new things and just give me these new experiences. So it sounds from like our conversation so far that you have a lot of your work ethic is related back to being parents, and that really like just set things on a new path for you. Do you guys ever slip into parent mode at work with your subordinates?
No, he does.
Would you ever say you're a dad to us all?
It makes me really upset because everyone refers to Kevin as like the cool brother, and I'm officially the dad at conferences. And it might be because like I'm also the person that tends to go to bed at like 9 o'clock at conferences, and I'm up at the gym at like 5, and like no one respects that. So yeah,
you're there. Other guys are there. I just don't like getting up that early and working out.
He is on his own time zone over here at these conferences.
Yeah.
But speaking of, too, what do you like best about these conferences? And I mean that completely from a non-business development standpoint.
Oh, okay.
So I want to know, too, like, is it the travel? Is it the people? Is it the food? What do you look forward to when you go to these things? Again, outside of work.
Two things. It's harder to do the first. When time is available, I like to tack on a little bit of time before or after a conference. That provides a really good opportunity to bond, particularly with people in the office. And so, sometimes that's what we call the B team pool at the Planet Hollywood, where we get a very cheap cabana and just hang out and listen to a DJ and just do that for a day. Because, with two little kids, there is no cabana in my life outside of that. So I really enjoy that. And then the second thing is the people in the industry. We get to meet, and actually, funny enough, more often than not, it is people that I don't work with professionally that I get along best with at the conference. And so I've been able to actually make some really cool friends and people that I admire, respect. I like them as individuals, and don't care whether we ever create or don't create a business relationship from the event. But ultimately, that 2-hour dinner, getting to know about them, where they're from, what makes them tick.
What did they do bad in high school?
Right.
I mean, that's been a recent phenomenon. It's like as we gotten more comfortable in our own skin, like we've been able to kind of get closer with our not just clients, but I call them kind of like relationships in the industry, and just kind of get to know them more as people and what makes them tick.
Right.
That's been really great because, like, when you're at a lot of these things, you can kind of lose focus on that component, right? For me, it's sleep.
Fair.
I don't sleep early, but when I do, I don't even sleep a lot. But when I get to sleep uninterrupted, it's very nice. But the other thing is like, there's a lot of kind of places that we go on repeat, and I really enjoy eating at certain restaurants.
Oh, yes.
And so,
yes.
I love those rolls. You love those hand rolls.
The interesting part has become, like, for a long time, I didn't think that these restaurants were acceptable by a lot of, our friends and also my coworkers. Turns out they love it. So
Vegas, go. Favorite restaurant now.
Taco Bell Cantina.
That's also for Audie.
I still want to go.
We haven't gone yet, yes.
Probably right now still is probably Momofuku. I think that just in general, I can eat the most and enjoy it the most, and it's not super fancy. I don't really enjoy restaurants that are super fancy because it's like, should I be sitting upright and do I have to order wine and that kind of stuff? The other places right now, I probably would say, like, the guy, I forget his name, Roy Choi, the guy who opened
Best Friends.
Yeah, so Best Friends, the menu there looks awesome. Yeah. I'm really excited about that restaurant. And then, that's probably about it right now. There's this spot that Danny and I went to by recommendation by our friend Hui and Gary over at Prico. This tiny little hole-in-the-wall sushi restaurant. It's owned by one of the guys who used to run Nobu in Vegas. Amazing. And like Danny, me, and Tay were there one night after a conference, and like I did not expect them to go to town. They were going to town. Like they were eating like madmen. It was awesome.
That's so awesome. Those little hole-in-the-wall places are honestly the best ones. Shout out to Secret Pizza.
Yeah.
Well, very cool, very cool. So we obviously have this conference culture, but aside from that, Jurassic culture is pretty strong for a lot of different reasons, whether that be how close we are with one another, whether that be our unfirm attitude. But I want to know, what do you guys like best about our culture we have here at the office?
That's easy. For me, authenticity. Our office is truly a unique environment where people show up as themselves every single day. And we got a lot of weirdos here, and they're all acceptable in whatever weirdo form they come in. And it's amazing because I think when people, when you have your traditional office environment, what I feel happens is you're spending half your energy creating a persona that you think is acceptable in the office. Mm-hmm. And when you get rid of that desire, then it's like, cool, all I got to do, I don't have to think about how I'm being presented in this moment. Then you really get good thought. You get people at their best all the time because they're just not worried about the facade anymore. And I think that is the secret sauce of our environment.
Definitely can confirm that I enjoy this very much about working here. Kevin?
I mean, there's that aspect of things, and I agree 100%. Like, because it's like, you know, I come from a very hierarchical work environment before. I mean, I worked for a Korean bank. You can imagine it's like the military over there. I worked at a Korean law firm in LA. Very similar. Like, if the partner says jump, you say how high. You don't ask questions. And that was also ingrained in me since birth, right? Because, you know, Korean families are very strict. The nice part of, like, I did not think that I would thrive in a place like this, and I started to, and I still do. But, you know, aside from all that kind of stuff, like, what's really, really interesting is, you know, like, it's almost like the energy in this office that I've never ever seen, even at the most exciting startup. It could be our youth, it could be our willingness to try new things, it could be you know, our obsession with culture. I don't know what it is, but there's an energy here of not just how do we serve each other in a great way and make this place a great place to work, but also, like, how do we, you know, ensure that our clients and our friends are really, you know, enjoying themselves and having a good experience with us. And not just, you know, are they getting good client? Are they getting good customer service? No, it's not just that, right? So there's a lot of that going on, and it's kind of intangible in that way. And I don't think I've ever found this at any other organization. And I've been asked this by other law firms who try to recruit me. Like, they talk about this. I'm like, listen, man, unless you got this, like,
you don't get it.
I'm not really interested, you know, like,
yeah, your culture. So, I mean, you know, it's interesting you said that, because the best compliment that I've received, and it was in passing. The three of us were at CMA, and it was one of those conferences where we just like kept just going from place to place to place to place. And it was like 11:30 at night. I think I'm just buying everyone ice cream cookie sandwiches. And I'm like, who wants an ice cream cookie sandwich? And we're just handing them out. And I'm like, I'm going straight to bed after this. That was my secret ploy. We all kept going on because you're weirdos. But we're somebody who wasn't with us had walked by and had just overheard our, you know, ridiculousness. The next day came up to me and he goes, you know, I told my wife last night, and I was like, oh, we should be hanging out with the Jurassic folks more. They're always laughing. They're always having a good time. They know how to have a good time. And I think that's really indicative of why I love this place.
Yeah. Come hang out with us more. We will make you laugh, and we will also keep you from getting sued. It's a win-win. We love. All right, well, let's just take Jurassic completely off the table. We've all had, like, our terrible jobs when we were in college or whatever that may be. I know mine was, I was serving tables at good old Norm's in West Covina.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When was this?
This
I
was
that one a lot. And at 4 a.m.
Kevin was one of those clients who harassed me.
It was fate.
This is probably like 2016, 2017. So maybe. Okay.
This is like during college years. So yeah, no.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But I want to know too, what about like your like weird, like terrible jobs? Like those jobs all have like their fun times and their quirks and their charms to them. So what was your favorite, like, just crappy job?
I don't know if it was a crappy job, but like, it was like, so we talked about this in my meeting. We had this question about like, what was your most interesting job? And in college, I had a lot of really random part-time jobs. And I got a job at a waiter at a Korean nightclub in San Francisco. And so Korean nightclubs they don't anymore. They used to have this thing where gentlemen would come in and buy bottle service, and ladies would come in for free, and the waiters would persuade them to sit at a table and
entertain these guys
and participate in the revelries of the evening. Let's just say that. But in reality, the expectation of the waiter was to not just persuade, but also persuade, sometimes with force. So literally, one night I was tipped by a VIP. He gave me $500 and said, "I want you to bring those girls over here," and they refused. I'm not gonna like manhandle these ladies.
Right.
So one of the ladies that challenged me, if you can carry me up those steps,
no,
I will go. I literally grabbed this lady, put her over my shoulder, fireman's carry, run up. $500 is a lot of money to a college kid.
Oh my gosh!
So the next question is, Kevin, what have you done for $500? Apparently, he knows no bounds.
She challenged me, and I knew $500 was coming to me, so I did my job that evening.
I mean, as long as she was down.
But it was an interesting job because you learn these really interesting people skills, and you're also drinking very, very heavily. And so
Right.
it was probably the strangest job and the hardest job I've ever had in my life.
Aside from like scooping up girls and throwing them over your shoulder, what makes a Korean nightclub different than just any other nightclub?
It's very Korean.
Right. Love.
It's all Korean people.
The K-pop stands are there.
It's so this is before K-pop stands existed, right? And so like you have like very hardcore drinking going on. Like you have bottle service being offered, and guys are in there legitimately. Their only goal of getting bottle service is to get girls. And this is common for most nightclubs. But
that happens in nightclubs?
Oh, I know, right?
Weird.
The difference maker here
I
is
just get to hang out with
if
guys.
you're in Vegas, right? If you're Omnia, your waiter isn't going to try to persuade ladies to
Correct.
join you. At these nightclubs, the waiter's job is to persuade young ladies to join the table and enjoy in the revelries of the evening with the fine gentleman who bought a shitty bottle of Crown Royale. So that's the difference. It's called booking. We call it booking. So it doesn't exist anymore, falling out of fashion, but it was a thing back until like 2006. So it went away after a few years, but.
Very cool. All right. Well, to my users online, if you think we should have our next after party after a conference at a Korean nightclub, just go ahead and drop a thumbs up in that comment section. We will be monitoring.
Bring your $500 bills, yo.
I will not be waitering.
Kevin may still throw you over his shoulder, though. We can't be sure.
Well, with this year's inflation, it's more like $6.12 for him. So
yeah. All right, Nema. I'm sure everyone is terrified for this answer. What was your best worst job?
Two different jobs. So my very first job, I was 16 and I worked for In-N-Out Burger, which was probably to this day, I've probably learned more there than I've learned in any other place, particularly of the value of hard work. It was 1 o'clock. I have the best story of it. It was 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm just horsing around because at 1 o'clock, the place is dead. And the manager looks at me and she throws a rag and she goes, wipe down the counter. And I was like, I just wiped it down. She's like, wipe it down again. Right? Like, I don't care what time it is. You're here to work. You're on my clock and on my time. Right. And that was the culture and environment there of that it's never time to just be idle. And so I thought that was a great first job. And then the next job I did was one of my buddies was working as a waiter at the Holiday Inn. Mm-hmm. And you should never ever employ two dumb 17-year-old boys in the same restaurant. And so the place was dead. We had nothing to do. So
the Holiday Inn in the building?
Yeah, Holiday Inn. Yeah. There was no customers at this Holiday Inn. And we probably served 2 people a night. Like, we made recaf, which is just regular coffee and decaf poured together. Whether you order decaf or regular, you got the recaf. So, and we generally, like, we played football. We, like, one time we photocopied our butts and fell to the photocopier, ruined it, and like tried to blame it. I'm like, oh, I was trying to reach for a stack of papers.
And my pants fell down.
Don't hire dumb 17-year-old boys.
Love it. All right, too. And on that note, speaking of dumb 17-year-old boys, what do you guys enjoy most about working with each other?
I'm still to this day trying to get him to let loose one of these days at a conference. But you know, we're all we have a lot of pent up stress. You know, a little bit of
Taco Bell Cantina is the place to do it. I'm saying it again.
Yeah. A hard Baja Breeze,
Baja Blast.
I'm down. Let's do it.
We're gonna have to pay them royalties for just name dropping so many
Probably.
times.
It's
But
okay. It's okay.
All right. What do you guys love about each other? Besties?
Oh God. You go first because I don't do well in these kind of questions.
It's too much.
So Kevin is a quintessential procrastinator at a conference. And what I mean by that is, like, he's just kind of hanging out. And then when Kevin realizes that there's like a couple hours left in the conference, he's like, I'm going to hand out 700 cards. I'm going to meet everybody here. And he just bulldozes that room. He puts on his Korean $500 hat on and he just bull charges through there.
I'm feeling out the room, man.
He's assessing the situation.
I'm feeling out the room. You know, if this is because of IMN. Because we were at IMN.
No, this is every conference.
I'm in foreign territory at IMN. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I tend to do that though. Yeah. With Nema, it's been interesting because before we actually had departments, all that kind of stuff, I kind of used to like work for him, not really. And I also worked for Tony. It was kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
We didn't really have organization back then when we first started. And then, you know, he kind of started building out, you know, his department, and a lot of things you kind of look at, the way you think about the organizational management is very different than the way I think about things. But there's a lot of room for both, right? And so, and where I find it's kind of funny because we both fall victim to this is like, there was a point in my career as a manager where I've been very, 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 very strict. Like I was very, they used to call me General Kim, right? Like I was very like, I don't give a F, right?
You would hear Kevin yelling at his people every week, at least once.
I wasn't really yelling, but
no, he was yelling.
I'm loud.
He wasn't. I guess you weren't being. Well, no, you were being mean. I don't know. It wasn't. It was. I
was being very, very firm and unemotional about things.
He's basically responsible for Tay's current hair situation.
Tay had beautiful locks.
Luscious locks.
I was very non-empathetic. Let's just say that, right?
Yes.
And so, and watching you go through your own management kind of woes and different needs and you know, taking away from him, and there's a nice balancing act there that I need in my day-to-day kind of way I operate, because I'm a big believer in like, I know my way is probably not the right way in my brain. Like I always tell like partners and managers, I mean, like we have to make sure we don't believe in our own bullshit. That's been like tattooed in my brain as a little child, right? And so like I'm always like making sure, and now I do this with I watch him, but I also do it with like Melissa and other people, like watching them and taking little tidbits away. And it's been very valuable for me as a manager. I feel like I kind of become a lot more empathetic in a lot of ways. What's funny is he became a lot more strict in a lot of ways too.
Well, no, it's a really totally fair point, which is I think that oftentimes we are the last to listen to one another, but when we do, it's probably the best advice that I've received in a long time, right? Is oftentimes I think that I'm just yelling with Kevin and yelling at him and just being frustrated back and forth on things. We're both very much I think 99% of the time disagree. So,
you guys are those 17-year-old boys. You don't want to hear it from another person.
Exactly,
you don't want
right.
an adult telling you what's wrong.
That's right. But I can tell you is when the message has been received, and it oftentimes it's the exact right message at the right time where it has the most profound impact, where I go back and go, dude, he's right. All right. I need to come back. I need to think about this differently. And I need to I need to apologize or other. And it's usually this act of humbling that is required to go back and go, all right, like I really messed this one up.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, now while we're on the emotional side, talk about how much we all love each other. You guys are going to hate this next question. I already know it. This one's straight from the internet, but it is a question that I am very, very curious to see the answer to. So if you were to die today with no opportunity to ever contact another person, what would you most regret not having told someone?
This is easy for me because I told him that a lot of people know this about me. I'm not very good with expressing emotions. Most of my people are not. And so this is very true. We don't do this. And it would very much be regretting not saying I love you more to my family members. I don't do it. I don't say it. It's not part of who we are as people. We are all emotionally sensitive people. It is what it is. But especially to my father, because I think he needs it right now. He's getting a little older, and he's retired. He's a little, so that's probably
Does he say I love you to you?
No.
Yeah,
we don't. Either. You don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't do that. He did say he was proud of me once.
Yeah.
When I'm a partner, and that was about it. And so
does he say
when I got married,
it's like I'm proud of you for making partner, but I'm still mad you didn't go to medical school.
You could have been a doctor.
Wait, but does he say I love you to your kids?
No.
Interesting.
No. My actually, no, you're right.
Yeah.
I caught him say that to my oldest.
Yeah. I'm telling you.
I overheard it.
Skips the generation.
Skips the generation.
No, I just realized it. I know.
I just realized it.
Yep. That feeling.
That's messed up.
It's messed up. My dad says I love you to my kids all the time. Yeah. Still doesn't to me. Still to this day.
And so would you say same answer as Kevin, or what's your answer to this?
Inverted a little bit, which is I think for me, my mom has had unbelievable. My mom's a wonderful person, and has always been. And as a parent, I every day get a better appreciation for how challenging her life was, and for how many hard little decisions she had to make in parenting. And so I think the older I become, the more mature I become to understand her profound impact in my own life, just reliving it as a parent myself. And so for me, it's very much a like, and I don't say, my mom's not watching this, but like, I don't say this enough about her. Do you know what I mean? Or say it to I don't say it to her. She doesn't realize I feel this way.
All right, we're gonna have to circulate some links to some parents after this. So as a follow-up to that question, so as we all know, one of our firm values here is accountability, holding yourselves accountable and holding other people accountable. So I want to know, why haven't you guys told these people these things yet?
But it goes back into it, just what you said. At least for me, like
I tried doing. I got really drunk one Christmas, and my dad and I were getting real drunk. My brother was drunk. We're all gonna
hug.
My brother and I were like, dude, we're gonna say it.
It's our annual Christmas hug.
We're gonna say it this year. We're gonna tell mom we love her. And then we chicken out.
But you guys know you have these issues. So
mom,
what is it?
My mom is also the very she looks at you like, don't just say it. So she's like, because she was also raised that way too. So it's she doesn't know what to do with herself in that situation. So it's very challenging.
So she doesn't know how to respond to it, even if you would.
Yeah, exactly. And every Christmas when my brother and I get really drunk, we still always tell each other, because he doesn't get drunk very often.
This is a thing. You have an annual guilt at Christmas.
You gotta talk yourself out. I'm gonna do it this year, guys. This is it.
Oh, especially because every Christmas season, my mom owns 3 Hallmark stores, and for those of you who know about Hallmark, we are very, very busy during the holiday season, and so my mom is literally working associates hours during the months between Halloween and now, right? It's crazy. Right. So she hates life right now, right? And so she could use that little pick-me-up. I try it. I would just chicken out. She gave me that stare. She's like, don't you make this awkward for me, boy. I was like, oh, boy.
Channel your inner Ola. Maybe you should send her like an edible arrangement. Wait, you work at home? She works at Hallmark. Just send her a damn card.
That's the problem.
She already owns the card.
That's the problem, right? So
what are you gonna send her?
We're not very festive people either. Right. This is not a thing I would wear around the house because it's because of the Hallmark business. Everything around the house is Christmas oriented.
Right. It's overkill a little bit.
She basically sees Christmas puke for solid 3 months in a row. I don't think she wants to see it. So handwritten letters happen. Verbally, different story. And I don't. We'll see. Maybe one year I'll get really drunk and high, and I'll just do it then.
All right. We can make this happen. All right, Nema. Same question. Why don't you tell your mama you love her?
I tell my mom I love her all the time, but I don't ever go to that. I don't give a good why. I'm more of the Hallmark card writer, right? So I write very thoughtful cards to her, and my mom is always crying reading them. But it's interesting. I don't know why I don't say it to her. There's some weird fear. I don't know. It's better for a therapist couch, I guess. I don't know why I have a hard time.
We're not programmed to express emotion.
Yeah, that might be it, right? It might be one weird masculinity thing we don't know about.
It's just so strange though, because I feel like you guys are so emotional naturally, and I feel like you guys express these things at work.
Oh, no,
Nema, you've told me you love me 100 times. It's the same thing.
And I tell my mom I love her, but I don't go. But actually, that's a great example. I am so appreciative of you all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't express that in a meaningful way all that often. Right. I say it every now and again. And I think that I appreciate. My mom knows I love her. Right. No questions asked. Right. She doesn't know the extent in which I love her because I don't verbalize it particularly often. And I very much don't do that with even the people that I really love and I'm close to. I just generally don't do that. I'm a terrible communicator of my inner thoughts. And I think oftentimes people, hence why I win the shittiest person of the year award every year.
No, but actually, the other team members that I work with also tell Kevin is awful at even complimenting people because it's not something I'm programmed with. It's very, very challenging for me to do. I was never you grew up in an Asian American household, literally A, where's plus? B, where's why is it an A? It's very common, and it's not. And it's okay. It's just how we're just race the overachievers, and that kind of changes the way you think about that kind of stuff. So it's hard to, but it's kind of also, I feel like as long as you're trying, it's something, right? And people who make fun of me all the time for it, they know I'm trying. So,
I went to dinner with Kevin and Anthony like 2 months ago, and Anthony asked Kevin no less than 15 times to hug me, and he refused.
You guys are so weird with each other too. I'm like, Kevin has also hugged me before.
A hug.
He told me he loves me.
I need a hug.
This is so strange. All right, well, maybe this is like a perfect time to like transition into this too. Where do you see, and I'm hoping it's back related to this last question, where do you see the most potential for growth in the new year, either personally or professionally? Maybe you'll be better at telling people you love them and giving them hugs. Who knows? Where do you guys see the biggest room for growth?
For me, I am working on something very I'm very hard. It's very, very hard for me to do, but like it's a almost a patience test at home. I have found myself becoming massively impatient lately.
Yeah.
And I think it also kind of has to do with like how quick we are to do like work here, and we move very quickly at work, and but taking and learning to make sure you don't translate that at home.
Yeah.
From a growth standpoint, like I find myself just saying, stop it, and yelling at my kids a lot. And so like that's something I need to work on next year. I think that's the biggest area I want to work on. Professionally speaking, I'm just really excited for next year. We got a lot of tailwinds. It's going to be exciting 2022. So professionally, I think, our firm's going to do great next year and keep going. So it's, I say that every year, but still, so
coming in hot.
Yeah.
Coming in hot. For me, professionally, it's right now I wear a lot of different hats, and I move giant boulders, 1 inch at a time. I think for next year, there'll likely be a switch where I'm more focused on a few different areas and making real significant impact. And I think that's probably what I envision for next year professionally. Personally, I really want to end up, before I had kids, I was going to a lot of men's groups with my church, and that really was an awesome experience. I just had a bunch of really wise guys around me who gave me such good life advice and really cared about me in a unique way. It's hard, I think, as an adult it's hard not to have a mentor right now. I feel like that's a big missing component of my life. So I'd love to have a strong person to kind of just follow next year.
Very cool. Very cool. And then I guess last little question here before we run out of time. What are you most excited for in the new year? Totally different from the last question I just asked.
There's a lot of things that I'm excited for next year. I mean, I'm super excited for the release of the Rivian. I keep talking about this a lot in the office. Someone knows this about me, but we see them all the time because they're like factories right next to our office. I'm really excited for the release of that car.
And for those that don't know, Kevin is a redneck.
I like big cars.
He likes guns, trucks.
If I could have a gun in my truck, I would, but I can't.
Do you have a "Don't Tread on Me" flag somewhere laying around?
I have a Gadsden flag, and I don't have a flag. I have a T-shirt. And I'm gonna wear it next time. But no, yeah, I think also what I'm really looking forward to next year is like kind of there's a lot of big things happening to the industry that we serve, right? And so I think next year we're going to see even bigger news hit our space. And I think it's just going to be like game changing. I don't know what it's going to be, but like, it's just the news keeps getting bigger and bigger. Like today we even heard news about another massive lender getting acquired. And so like, I'm just really excited to see, more, I say growing up of the private lending industry at large. And for us as a law firm, really just taking 22 by the horns and just kicking ass and taking names. And I know we can. So,
yeah. For me, it's very much the year of lightning docs. I mean, I think, for those that don't know, we've created kind of an online system that creates loan documents. It's gotten some legs already. It's really just been a referral based word of mouth business. But I think, we joke about it internally, particularly with our coder, who's like, man, like you guys are doing pretty well for a product that's got that's not a great user interface, that has got so much room to actually do, to grow this thing. It's exciting. I think, because to me, it's kind of like, that's our little startup here at the firm, right? Like we have kind of this little skunkworks project we've been building in the background, but like some people know, some people don't. And I feel like we're going to have the grand release next year, right? We'll finally get to see some of the fruit of what is this little skunkworks project and what will it produce, and really be a real force within our industry.
Very cool. You heard it here first, folks. Watch out for lightning dogs taking the world by storm next year. Well, everyone, that is all the time we have for today. It's 2 p.m. So I want to thank everyone for joining us online, giving us your time and just watching us, supporting us, always being here for us. And also I want to thank Kevin and Nema. I totally just looked at the wrong person when I did that. I do want to thank Kevin and Nema for just getting deep and getting personal.
No.
Do I get hugging us?
Bring it.
Tell them you love us. Tell them you love us. No, thank you all so much. We look forward to what the new year has in store for us and can't wait to see you all. Lots of love. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everyone.